This is the Ground Game Podcast, where we cover politics from the ground up. Here are your hosts, Tom LoBianco and Patrick Pfingsten.
From sea to shining sea, above the fruited plain, we're all going to hell in a hula hoop.
Well, it's better than handbasket.
This is the Ground Game Podcast, the day after the most consequential election of our lifetimes, maybe in the history of our nation.
Could be.
I promise you, hi, Patrick here, Tom there.
Yes.
I promise you that I'm not going to sit here like the liberal media has for the last not quite 24 hours, 18 hours, and whine and moan about why people hate America and how they could do this to themselves and completely disregard the fact that Democrats blew this election.
Yeah.
Democrats blew this election.
Yeah.
And it's time that we all start talking about that honestly.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is the most flawed candidate for president we have ever seen.
It literally
three times. And even after the Joe Biden debacle, and don't get me wrong, it was a debacle.
Yeah.
Democrats had a tightened win. First of all, Joe Biden never should have been running again. He should have shuffled out of the Oval Office into the Rose Garden in November of 2022 and said, you guys, I'm still feeling vigorous. You guys, I'm still feeling like I can make a change, but I'm really old. And it's time for me to step aside.
Yeah. He
does that in 2022. You probably have a free-for-all for the Republican or Democratic nomination in 2024. It's possible Harris wins it. Yeah. It's possible she doesn't.
That's right.
But whoever that person is, whether it would have been Gavin Newsom or Elizabeth Warren or J.B. Pritzker or et cetera, that person would have been tried and tested and had their own organization, had their message tested, and wouldn't be trying to run a 3-year national campaign in 120 days.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
That's the situation that Kamala Harris got stuck with, partly because, one, Biden didn't step aside in 2022, and two, because he waited until 3 weeks after the debate before he finally stepped aside.
Yeah, that's right, man. Yeah, it could be seen as historic malpractice. Now we don't know. All right. So, all right, guys. We got special on the live stream over at 24/7 News live streaming this first. So let me give you a little heads up. You see me looking up. That's I got 2 cameras here. That is how hardcore we are on the Ground Game Podcast. Okay. Guys, Patrick, and for new Ground Game Pod listeners, Patrick, longtime Republican operative, radio broadcast professional, catch him at the Illinois, WMAY-FM, Springfield, Illinois. Never Trump from the jump. Yeah, never Trump from the jump. What I would consider to be normal conservative. Pledges oath to the Constitution, abides it. I'm the reporter. I'm an old AP reporter. I don't know if that makes me enemy of the people, independent journalist, however you want to coin it. But whatever we are in right now, we don't know yet. And I think that's important to say right at the top, because God knows I've been struggling with this myself. I had all my barometers set to the women vote showing up big for Kamala. That did not happen. The opposite happened. So we're all trying to navigate this right now. We're all trying to figure out what's going on. Yeah.
All right, let's start with we're not going to do our downs and segments and stuff today. We're just going to have a chat this afternoon. It's about 5 o'clock Eastern. About 5 o'clock Eastern is we're sitting down. We've had a little time to get our ducks in a row and see how we're feeling and put things together. And I'm honestly trying. and one of your commenters saying billions spent in social media is the reason why Dems lost. The data tells you that's completely wrong. Data tells you that social media is the best way to reach voters right now. So that's wrong. I'm trying to, I pulled up a podcast from one of the very anti-Trump groups today, and the host was essentially in tears, like the day after. Like, we're not getting that here. Because I was never for Harris.
That's right.
I was specifically against Trump. Didn't love. Never loved Harris. Never, whether it was personally or policy wise. I have been sitting here critical of her in your live videos that we've done, and in the podcast that we started a few weeks ago, essentially telling you all that she hasn't done enough. She had no real position on the economy. The economy was the number one issue.
Yes.
She had no real position in immigration other than let's pass the Senate bill, which people don't understand. And she never made a significant break with Biden on anything.
Yeah.
I thought the Afghanistan withdrawal was the right way to do it. Say it was time to get out of Afghanistan, but we bungled it.
Yeah.
And I would have followed the lead of our generals more closely. That doesn't spurn Biden's legacy among Democrats. Democrats are still going to love him because he beat Donald Trump the first time. Yeah. So saying I would have done something differently than the guy that I ran with does not mean you're throwing him under the bus. Yeah. It just means you're having a split with him on something. I mean, Tom and I are friends, and if he orders the chicken piccata and I order the chicken parm, it doesn't mean we disagree with each other. It just means we have a different plan.
And I'm going to attack properly to make sure the American people know that after watching the results come in last night.
Yeah. So she was in a really bad spot, but there are two fundamental things that really guided the end of this campaign. And my ear thing is just not staying in, and that's okay.
So dude, we have lived this campaign. Let's just say that. I think we've all lived this campaign. We have lived this campaign. All right. So earpods are falling out or whatever. That is the least of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least it's better than like pants falling down or something. But
we were exactly 48 hours away from Trump pulling that move.
We're going to get to that guy. We're going to get to that Blanken guy. I think we have to talk, though. There are two specific things from Harris. One was the tightened time frame of this campaign.
Okay,
very difficult to overcome. She inherited Biden's team in Delaware, which was running a completely different campaign than she ever should have run.
Great point.
Bringing David Plouffe in was a great move. Bringing Stephanie Cutter in was a great move. But you can't make gold bars out of pixie dust.
Yeah.
And that's what they were forced to try to do in the stretch run of this campaign. And they never figured out a paid ad strategy that really resonated. Yeah. It was all very soft, very gauzy, very and they never seemed to settle on what would actually work, because they plateaued after the debate.
Yeah.
And never figured out what was actually going to move people after that.
Yeah.
And the thing was, they threw a lot of stuff at the wall. They tried to do the Trump is bad message, which didn't work for Hillary Clinton in 2016, barely worked for Joe Biden in 2020. They tried to do the Kamala relates to you because she grew up a middle-class kid. I'm so sick of that line, which didn't resonate with people.
Nope.
Because she's literally the vice president of the United States.
Yeah.
And then in their closing days, they tried to do the democracy, the January 6th thing.
Yeah.
Which probably wasn't turning undecided voters anyway. Here's the biggest problem. And I'm ranting and venting, so
Do it, baby.
give me a moment here. Democrats in this country have proven in the last few days, last few months at least, but definitely the last few days, and certainly the reaction from that quote unquote liberal media. It is a party driven by elites from Washington and New York and Los Angeles,
Yeah.
who have no blanking idea what people in between the Appalachians and the Rockies actually care about.
Yeah.
When you heard, I turned on MSNBC last night, God help me, because I wanted to see Kornacki's data, because I like the data. I'm a former campaign guy. I like the data. You had a desk of Stephanie Rule, Lawrence O'Donnell, Joy Reid, Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, who I love, one other, and Chris Hayes. And in the 2 minutes that I could stomach it, they essentially called their fellow Americans idiots and gomers and morons and said that they're voting against their own interests. No, they're not. They voted on economic interests. You, Rachel Maddow, and your $4 million a year salary or whatever it is at MSNBC, and all of you guys living in DC and New York and living the high life, don't understand that the people in rural Indiana or Columbia, Missouri, or Ames, Iowa, can barely manage their budget when they've got to pay more at the grocery store.
Yep.
They've got to pay more to fill their gas tank. They've got to pay their property taxes. They've got to try to afford college. And everything is more expensive, and their wages aren't keeping up.
Yeah.
But what do Democrats tell us? The economy's better than it's ever been. Bite me, okay? In a macro, I get it. I can read the numbers that they can, but they have no concept. The Democrats, the media have no concept of how life is in the real world. And hello, I'm in the Chicago suburbs, one of the most expensive places in the Midwest to live. Yes, I know that Trump's tariffs are going to raise prices. I get it. He did a better job of selling it than Harris did. He did a better job of selling it. Yeah. I had a congressman from Illinois on the radio yesterday who I got into it with over tariffs. And he tried to pull the wool over my eyes that well, this is going to spur economic development and bring these companies back to the United States. No, it's not.
Yeah, no,
it's not. But we know that.
Well, let me just drop in here, because the ethos, when we came up with this podcast, I mean, one of our guiding principles is we're not going to bring on guests who just flat out lie. Like if you want to come on and tell me that Donald Trump single-handedly resuscitated a squirrel in New York City after it was being attacked by a woke mob of the Illuminati with George Soros chips embedded in their brains or whatever the hell it is, that person is not showing up on here. All right. And I tell Patrick, you've been in the trenches a long time, man, and good on you, brother.
Look at this beard. Look at this.
That's
beard.
Right, baby. That's
I'm actually 27.
I started this campaign 23 years old. Now look at me. I'm 24.
The problem here is that Democrats have completely lost the message. It used to be the party of knowing how to work for and connect with the middle and working class.
Yeah.
And it used to be that the Republicans were the party of the country club. Yeah. That Republicans were the rich guys, the business guys, the Chamber of Commerce guys, and that they didn't care about the the little man down the street just trying to make ends meet. This is a Trump thing, has flipped.
Yeah.
Because this freaking guy understands what voters want more than any politician.
It's remarkable.
Since Reagan, at least since Reagan. You guys, I'm not defending Trump for those that are watching on Tom's live stream. I'm not defending Trump.
Yeah. This is the medicine. It's time for medicine.
We know that he sucks. Okay. There is a patent level of disaster in his wake from the first term and through this campaign.
Yeah.
This is a terrible situation that we found ourselves in. You don't have to explain to me, people in Tom's chat, that Trump bungled COVID or that Trump's tariffs are bad. This is not a defensive Trump podcast. Okay, we must. Hi, I'm Patrick. We haven't met. It's. I've spent 9 years criticizing this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he has found a way to connect to a portion of this country. And I come from my home county in downstate Illinois, about 2 hours south of Chicago, went 78% for Trump yesterday.
Wow.
Okay, so these are my people. They don't like Democrats because they think they are extreme, they think they're woke, they think they're elite, and they think they're out of touch.
Yeah.
Donald Trump has made himself look like the guy who understands and cares about them, even though you and I know it's bullshit. Can I say that on your live stream? I know.
Oh yeah, it's cool on the live stream.
I know there's a Substack guy.
We got to worry about with the algos. Yeah.
Don't ban me, Substack guy.
Dude, Zach's cool, man. He's cool with it. I got
so
after this election, totally warranted.
So the bottom line here is that it is time, and I talked to a congresswoman from downstate Illinois today, Nikki Budzinski, a Democrat, who just won her second term last night, and she represents a gerrymandered district, so it picks up a lot of like your Champaign, University of Illinois College Town, your Springfield, where the state capital is, and all the way down to almost St. Louis. It's a little snake that runs down through the middle and south of Illinois. And she called it a disastrous night for Democrats, and points down to the fact that the Democratic Party does not know how to talk to voters in the middle right now.
Yeah, that's right.
And it is time for a come to Jesus moment for the Democratic Party. If Jamie Harrison is watching or listening to this, Mr. Chairman, come on the podcast.
Yeah.
And two, call Nikki Budzinski, call Sherry Bustos.
Yes.
Man,
get Heath Schuler. Bring him back up.
Who represented a relatively rural North Carolina district many years ago. We could call Heath Schuler sometime. I've got his number.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are, Andy Bashir, I think it's a good example, even though he's sort of a Nepo baby.
Yeah, whatever.
But also he knows how to talk to, I say those people, but I mean, they're my people. It's the kind of people that I grew up with. And we are looking at a political realignment.
Yeah.
Unlike anything we've seen since the New Deal.
Yeah.
I mean, this is bigger than the Reagan Democrats.
Yes.
And while we thought as late as last week, when it looked like Harris was starting to get some momentum, that this might be the election that puts Trump and Trumpism to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we walk out of election night with this race already decided. I mean, called by the AP on Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
Who the hell would have thought that?
I know. We were saying it could go into the weekend.
And
Thursday,
and two,
something like that.
A MAGA vice president, a MAGA Senate, and I really I'm interested in the majority leader fight now, which I wouldn't have been before. But John Thune is not MAGA.
No, that's right.
John Thune came to the Senate in 2004 by beating Tom Daschle. He's a George W. Bush Republican.
I remember that. That was wild. Well, hold on, Patrick. I'm gonna push back on something because I've been looking at the exits, talking with a lot of folks, listening to voter sentiments, and I'm gonna write about this later. It's gonna be tomorrow. It's after I get some sleep. Okay, I'm not doing it tonight. I just ain't. You remember the double haters? Yeah, right.
I was one of them.
When we spent all that time talking about whether people would come off the bench, show up and vote or not. Well, they did. A lot of people did not show up and vote, and a lot of other people showed up to vote for Trump, not because they're MAGA, not because they're a bucket of deplorables or anything, not because they're hardcore neo-authoritarian, because he was the other option. You only get two options in America as it stands. I guess you could have gone with Jill Stein. Some people did. But you only get two options. And this is why I was thinking about this morning. I was sitting down, kind of digesting everything. And I say this as somebody who's been a reporter for about 24 years now. Our news comes too fast. We got to take a little bit of time to kind of figure things out. And politicians love when the news moves fast because it gives the politicians a chance to shape things. All right. And there's kind of like the scream fest going on. I've always found in my reporting that things are way more nuanced than they appear on the surface. Certainly way more nuanced than, what you get on cable. And that's part of the reason we're doing the whole independent journalism thing right now. And I do think that one of if there is a silver lining out of this, it'll be a renaissance of actual independent journalism. I do think that that's something that's coming because people need good news. People need good intelligence to work from. What you hear from a lot of people who voted for Trump, anecdotally, is not, they don't like him. They don't, they're not really bought in all this MAGA stuff. They just really didn't like being talked down to on things like look at the trans ad that they played. And Republicans are incredible at this. I've talked about this with a lot of my Never Trump sources. Remember that you said about voting against their interest. Remember when that was 2004. People could not believe that so many people, what's the matter with Kansas? How could all these people be voting against their economic interest to reelect George W. Bush and not somebody who is an actual war veteran, John Kerry? And you know who swift voted the heck out of John Kerry? The campaign manager for this one, Chris LaCivita. And what did he do this time? It's politically brilliant. I would also argue incredibly insipid based on its lack of accuracy but that's politics. This is the NFL. Ain't no two ways about it. He put out an ad busting on trans people and it on Kamala Harris on the, in jail, the surgeries in jail. And in reality only affects exactly two people. But plug that into the media ecosphere that most people get. A lot of people get in this country. All right. And this is part of our fractured media. And immediately gets to this idea of Democrats being condescending on so many voters. Democrats don't want you. Democrats.
They are.
And
they absolutely are.
Yeah.
And we saw them held account to it last night.
This is the medicine. Democrats need to get right with America. The professional Democrats.
No, this is the broken bone. The healing needs to start in the next 2 years. Democrats need to have the self-awareness that we effed up and need to figure out how we appeal to a wider swath of people.
Yeah.
You know,
Be representative.
or Republicans who, after the 2012 autopsy, said we need to figure out how to reach a broader swath of people. They didn't realize that the answer was populism.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, but that's what grew the ranks of the Republican Party was Donald Trump's version of populism.
Yeah.
And to your live stream commenter who just said her daughter's studying to be a journalist, tell her to go to law school.
Oh,
tell her to go to law school.
Do both. We need journalists in this world now more than ever, because we know what a Trump administration looks like. We've seen it before.
Do we know what a Trump and this is where I'm trying to put on my logic at, okay? Like he's going to fill the White House with grifters, and they're going to do what he wants.
Yes.
And at some point somebody's going to break the law, but that means Johnny McAtee's going to prison, not Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's how it works in the mafia.
This capo's going down, and then we'll have some gabagool.
That's right. And then you bust out the joint.
Leave the gun, take the cannoli. So there are going to be some levels of guardrails in our system that will continue to prop up, but then you're going to have the issues of he'll fire Chris Wray, he'll put a grifter, he'll put a bootlicker in as attorney general. You know, Jack Smith gets fired on day one. The January 6th cases get thrown out on day one. Eileen Cannon gets canonized on day two. Eileen Cannon gets canonized. My brain's melting. Okay, give me a break.
Yeah, dude, it's where we're at.
There were people who held him back the first time. The system will hold him back this time, the second time. And my hope is, no matter who wins the House, for two different reasons, I think whoever wins the House is going to slow the progress of whatever the hell Trump wants to do.
Yeah.
He's going to have now at least 53 in the Senate. Probably, I saw Michigan went to Democrats.
Slotkin. Yeah, and
Democrats. And Baldwin won today too.
Yeah.
So they're not going to get those two, which were really close. McCormick, Pennsylvania hasn't been called, right?
I don't believe so. Yeah, McCormick's up by like a half.
Nevada Senate has not been called. Gallego got called in Arizona because Kerry Lake's a dumpster fire.
Does she get a my pillow
with a bad tan?
Well, and look at what Trump and here's my hopium for everybody. Look at how Trump closed out this race. He didn't bring on the Jewish space laser, MTG. All right. He didn't.
It's not like who he brought on was better.
Well, there's the Russia connection. God knows Gabbard and RFK Jr. and Tucker Carlson in that crowd. But Trump's very fickle with his friends. People aren't friends for long. And if you listen to Jeffrey Epstein, he'll tell you he doesn't have any friends. All right. But look who he did not bring on. He kept Matt Gaetz away at the end. Matt Gaetz is under investigation for 17-year-old girl. And you know what? If Hakeem Jeffries becomes speaker, we might find out more about that out of the House. I mean, a lot of questions still out there. Trump is fickle, and he's only concerned about himself. That's what we know about his decade in American politics, and certainly from his business career. And if somebody becomes a problem, he gets rid of them. All right, blames them for everything, and we're going to have a repeat of what we saw before, which is the warring spheres of influence around him. It's not completely united. It's not guaranteed. The people who are the loudest right now, I was talking about this with a friend earlier today. The people who are the loudest right now are the RFK Juniors and the Elon Musks. The people who are not very loud are people like Mike Pompeo, who's waiting in the wings. Go check out, if you guys don't know this already, go check out America First Policy Institute. All right. That is like we've always called it the shadow White House, the White House in waiting. That is the group that is ready to basically get renominated for all these cabinet positions. And it's Linda McMahon, all right, Larry Kudlow. If you look at the transition, there's already been a lot of infighting in Trump world that was very akin to the first Trump administration over control of the transition between Trump Jr., between the New York investors. All right, this is Howard Lutnick, Trump's old New York friends. You'll have the family fighting with each other. It's not going to be Ivanka this time. Junior and Eric seem to work pretty well together, but you'll have the old friends of Trump from New York fighting with the family. There's a lot more in play here than is readily apparent. And the other thing I'd point out too, and this is, it's kind of what I do with 24 Sight. And one of the things I think we're doing a good job with here at the ground game is we put our feet on the ground. All right. We don't do the whole screamo thing. We keep it on an even keel. You can't
I get
pass.
kind of screamy sometimes.
Yeah, well, hour and a half of sleep, I'll do it to you. It was like they don't have the numbers. Nobody has the numbers in Congress to pass meaningful legislation.
Well, and that's my point is that if no matter what happens in the House, if Democrats take the House, Hakeem Jeffries is going to keep that Democratic conference in line.
Oh yes,
they are well conditioned to stay in line, and they will be the bulwark against the tides from the Senate. On the opposite hand, if the Republicans manage to keep the Senate or keep the House, they're going to have an even more narrow majority. Mike Johnson's going to be lucky to get nominated as Speaker again. May have a fight even just to make him Speaker again. And he's going to not only I've used the old John Boehner phrase of keeping 218 frogs in a wheelbarrow. This is like
that's great. All of that.
This is like 218 oiled pigs in a wheelbarrow that you got to try and keep your arms around. and it's mostly 8 or 9 of them in that Freedom Caucus club thing.
Yeah, I know.
And they will be intent on blowing up government from day one. And even if Republicans have the majority, they will never be able to get anything done, anything of meaning done, because they can't keep their own caucus in line. And if I'm Hakeem Jeffries, I'm saying, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, you and 10 of your Republican colleagues can come and help us pass the bill that we want. And the Senate can come along with us in a bipartisan fashion. It just means gridlock, which frankly, a little bit of gridlock doesn't scare me that much right now, because there's going to be enough problems coming out of the executive branch for the next 2 years or however long Donald Trump is president, that having some pushback from Congress, some ways to slow things down in Congress and in the courts is probably the best thing we could ask for.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's good for all the hullabaloo. And a couple of things I was surprised by yesterday. In politics, you always say that you're fighting the last war. You're always paying attention to what happened 4 years prior. 4 years prior, this country was in a pressure cooker. There were people showing up with AK-47s, body armor. I remember there was that MAGA truck that tried to run a Biden campaign truck bus off the side of the road in Texas. I mean, that was like Mad Max, and it was insane. All right. And I mean, not the least of which was a friggin' insurrection, domestic terrorism at the United States Capitol on January 6th. All right. That was peak, but it was also the pressure cooker of COVID. We did not see that yesterday. Now, we saw a lot of bad stuff. We saw a lot of the Russians messing around, which they do. And look, that's just a part of where we are in the world right now. calling in bomb threats to Democratic precincts. Okay. Did that hurt things? Yeah. Did it hurt? Did it hurt enough numbers to fundamentally alter the race? No, not based on the numbers that we've seen, but it helped. It was, I did an interview for a documentary. Oh God, back in like April or May, I think. And they were asking about the 2016 race. And they were asking me, who ran the better race? It was Hillary or Trump. And I thought about it for a second. I was like, who ran the best race? It was Putin. He did. He spent the least amount of money to get the absolute most effect out of it. And that was in 2016. And he did. I mean, because the US government, the intel, you got to remember that we have professionals in this. I mean, at least in the official side of things, clearly we do not have professionals who are very good on the the Democratic campaign side. Okay, but inside the actual government, we do have professionals who are very good at this stuff. They were not caught off guard this time. Okay, so I mean, Patrick, I think you make a great point, man. When you say that there is a system in place with guardrails. I mean, look, I got frantic texts last night from a couple of folks being like, am I gonna have to leave? I'm like, hold on. We don't know what's happening yet. Okay, we don't know. Now we're going to get a lot more clarity in the next couple of days, and that's where you need us. And to who was asking about whether a daughter should go study journalism, yes, you should. We need journalists. You're not going to make any money, but Patrick will hire you as an Oppo researcher for some of his campaigns for all the normal Republicans.
Well,
okay.
I mean, that's part of my problem is I worked in journalism, made no money, went to work in politics, started to make money, and then I tanked my entire career by opposing Donald Trump and losing all of my Republican campaign business. So this asshole's cost me a lot of money.
Yeah. Integrity is a B sometimes.
All right, so we're not going to stick around too much longer. We are for those of you listening or watching the podcast. We're live streaming this to Tom's 24 site subscribers. We do a Q&A segment in each of our shows. So if you have some questions that you'd like to drop into the chat, we'll answer those before we get out of here. And have a little conversation with you guys because we've kind of been talking at you for the most part for those of you that have been listening, and we do appreciate that. And we're going to do another pod later in the week. We'll get kind of back to our normal format of our 4 downs and a guest and Q&A and that sort of thing. But your questions we're interested in. One of them. Why don't I go ahead and hit our little intro for that.
It's time for the second half.
All right. So for our questions, first one from the chat, is there anything we can do now?
Yeah. All right. Here is every election. At the end of every election starts the next election. And I was thinking back to 2016, when Trump, made all this, everything he says is made up, but he's like biggest crowds ever, blah, blah, blah. All right. Well, the next day, the biggest crowds ever did show up, the Women's March. All right. And that translated across the board in races in 2018. All right. So look, if you are a Democrat, normal Republican, or old Republican, I don't know what the Trump Republican Party is right now. I would say, if you want to change things, get active. And there's races everywhere. School board, county council, you name it.
In 2026, the entire House is up.
Mm-hmm.
These senators are on the ballot. Joni Ernst from Iowa, Roger Marshall from Kansas, Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, Susan Collins from Maine, Steve Daines from Montana, Tom Tillis from North Carolina, Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, John Cornyn from Texas,
Wow.
There are Republicans that have sold out to Donald Trump on that list. Lindsey Graham and John Cornyn being a couple of the worst.
Susan Collins, he learned his lesson.
Oh, I think he learned his lesson. And frankly, when it comes to Susan Collins' politics, I like her because she represents her state well. But that's real just a bunch of BS. So find your congressional districts, and depending on what state you live in, like I live in Illinois, where Democrats gerrymandered the hell out of the map. So I live in a township outside of Chicago that used to be pretty evenly split and is now heavily Democrat. And I got drawn into a heavily Democratic congressional district. So it doesn't matter if I'm giving money to the nobody that would eventually challenge her in 2026. But if I wanted to go take out a crazy, I mean, it's different in Illinois because they're all Democrats because that's how they drew the map up here. But if you wanted to help recruit a Republican primary challenger to Mary Miller in Southern Illinois, who's an absolute nutball, then you start to talk to your anti-Trump friends and see who that person is and send them $50 or find that candidate against Joni Ernst or Lindsey Graham or John Cornyn and send them $100, or go make a weekend. If you live in Illinois, go make a weekend in Iowa and get ready to knock on doors, which is the worst thing I ever did in campaigning. I hated knocking on doors, but you do it because it matters.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know Democrats like to use the term organized because it's their blanket phrase for we're going to try and get people to do what we want. But in reality, this means get involved. It means become more politically active than you've ever been in your life.
Yeah.
Donald Trump can only last so long. He's 78 years old. He's not in the world's best health. He's not in the world's best mental health. And is one Big Mac from where. Now, that certainly means that J.D. Vance would follow, which is it's a brand new set of problems. But Donald Trump is an effect more than a cause of where we are today.
Yes, that's right.
And it means that Democrats, if they want, and again, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not telling y'all how to do things, but what they have to do is start to build from the ground up.
Yeah.
And it means outside of New York and LA and Chicago and Washington, D.C.
Yep.
It means growing in places that look like Illinois 17 or Indiana 9, some of these outlier districts that they already have Indiana 17, thanks gerrymandering. But these are the kind of places that they grow.
You know what, man? Remember Pod and all these celebrities that showed up out of all this Pod Save America? Pod did not save America. That was the entire Obama campaign operation. It's got to be something new. I remember in 2016, the Democratic establishment, and it's still a Democratic Party. The Republican Party is not a party. It's a Trump family operation. That's what it is now. All right. The Democratic Party suppressed all of Bernie Sanders and refused to acknowledge the same thing that was happening on their side. Because a political realignment, it's not necessarily left or right. It's, we would call elitist, populist, whatever the hell. And I would argue that, a Trump Republican Party that's filled with billionaires, it can't possibly be populist, anti-populist. But Democrats need to find that on their side. And they suppressed it in 2016. 2020 was a crisis. Ironically enough, the person who came closest to that was, Joe Biden himself, the old school New Deal type. He understood the unions. Democrats don't get with the unions anymore. I don't understand it.
Well, I think part of that is Trump's appeal. I mean, I think Trump appealed to the rank and file union members, at least private sector union members, more than.
What was it, like training day? It's like this is my sandwich. Come on, man. Don't just give it up.
No. I'm saying, but I think you're even seeing union folks, and I think this is an issue like your AFL-CIO types are running into, is that they look at policy and say, we're going to support Democrats, but their members look at the economic conditions, the fact that they have to work overtime every week just to pay their property tax bill and send their kids to school.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, why the hell would I support these guys that are continuing to make my life harder? This Biden administration, where inflation went through the roof, or this, in Illinois, where they're raising our taxes every year.
Yeah.
And our property taxes every year. They're the ones who are stepping back and saying, I don't like what's happening on your watch, so I'm going to go vote for this orange guy who sounds like he cares about me, even though it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
Even though it's all bullshit.
And this is part of my hopium for everybody. This is, when you work in politics, you cover politics, and you live inside these little bubbles, it's very easy to, start thinking about people as one-dimensional. Voters are smart, man. They're going to watch it again. People are going to watch the third season or 3.0 of the Trump show and remember all the reasons why they got frustrated the first time around. All the insanity. Insanity is a benchmark of who Trump is. It's just the way he operates. All right. And yeah, does he die in office? That's possible. The guy has been eating cheeseburgers, left and right on the campaign trail. I'm not sure Diet Coke's any healthier than regular Coke, for forever now. He's a walking bag of cholesterol. Okay. It's just objectively unhealthy. All right. But to the extent that he does stay in there for a long time, maybe, rides out all 4 years. The insanity is the baseline operating for every Trump operation. It's just the way it is. All right. And people are going to see that, they're going to watch it. He's going to advertise it because he loves the attention.
All right. Last question before we get out of here. What are the institutional conditions that remain to prevent a Trump-aligned capture of the courts in the next 2 years? Well, I don't think it's a matter of capturing the courts, because if you think about it, many of the judges that turned away the 2020 election denial lawsuits and stuff, a lot of them were Republican appointed and Trump appointed judges.
Right.
So for every Eileen Cannon who's clearly corrupt, there are 5 different judges who did the right thing. While you're Amy Coney Barrett's and Brett Kavanaugh's and Neil Gorsuch has made some bad decisions, right? The immunity deal, etc. Generally, they are normal conservative thinkers. It's Alito and Thomas that are the problem right now. So the courts are still the guardrail. When Trump does something illegal, the courts are going to be what stops this. Congress is going to be what stops this. When Trump says, I'm going to codify into law that Chinese products are banned from the United States, it's not going to happen with as divided as Congress is going to be, no matter who has the House.
Right.
As we mentioned, that either Democrats are going to be in solidarity against Trump, or House Republicans aren't going to be able to tie their own shoes. and that's where you run into being able to stop the excess. There's going to be a judge out there who who goes along with something crazy. But that's why we have an appellate court. That's why we still have John Roberts leading the Supreme Court.
Yep. Yep.
And Roberts is a really, if you've ever read some of this reporting on the Supreme Court, and while there's been some stuff that he hasn't been able to move, like the immunity thing, Roberts is incredibly influential.
Yes.
And if he goes into an Amy Coney Barrett's office or Brett Kavanaugh's office or Gorsuch's office, and he and Gorsuch are like that philosophically, he can keep the train on the tracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's my hope, is that my real hope is that Trump says we're going to enact tax cuts. We're going to make a stricter immigration law, and I'm going to sit here and eat Big Macs for the next 4 years and keep myself out of prison. That's my hope for a Trump administration. Just like do no harm. The problem is that he can't keep his hand out of the cookie jar. So it's going to require Congress. It's going to require the courts to be that backstop on the crazy shit.
Yeah.
All right. We've already gone almost an hour. We should probably wrap up because I've got a kid to cook dinner for and stuff.
I need to sleep.
I'm tired of sitting in this office, and you need sleep. But certainly thank you for all of those that listen to the Ground Game podcast. For those of you on Tom's live stream of this, just go to youtube.com and search the Ground Game podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel and join us. We'll have another episode at some point this week. We're trying to find someone way smarter than us that can explain the world, and which shouldn't be hard because there's 330 million people in this country, and they're almost all smarter than us.
And guys, support independent journalism. We're facetious about it, talking about this earlier, but the Enlightenment and ideals of the American experiment, which continues, are built on public understanding and good information. And even when we're tired, we bring that good information, but we need your support, guys. All right. So sign up, make sure to subscribe on YouTube for the Ground Game Pod. It's me and Patrick right now doing this. All right. We're a 2-man band. I don't know what a 2-man band is. What's that like?
That would be a duo.
Yeah. Is that John and Paul? Is that, I can't think.
We're the drum and fife.
Yeah, we are the drum and fife. Yeah, believe it. Make sure to go subscribe on YouTube. I'm still trying to figure out how to integrate this properly into 24site.news, 24sight.news on the Substack. We are moderately technically proficient and getting more technically. This election gave me a little kick in the tuchus to get moving on it. I'll tell you that.
And listen, here's the thing. Like whatever coalition emerges from this can't be a partisan one. I'm a conservative who's no longer a Republican. And some of the people, certainly in this chat or that we run into in our daily lives are pro-democracy Democrats.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily saying third party because I don't think a third party is viable or realistic. But it means that there's going to need to be some coalition that grows a pro-democracy movement in this country. There are these groups, your Lincoln Projects, et cetera, and they do great work, but in the end, do they move people? Do fancy TV ads move people? Do YouTube videos move people? It's going to take us. It's going to take regular people motivating our neighbors and our friends to get our asses involved. And that's our goal for the next 4 years. For those of you that are on here that are more progressive than me, think about the things that you agree with your more moderate or conservative friends about. Is that national security? Is that property taxes? Whatever it may be, find the common ground. Because once we get people on the same page, once we have something that we can all think together about, work together about, that's how we can actually make real progress. But if we're just bitching about an orange guy in the White House, we're just going to continue to be divided and continue to hurt for 4 years and beyond. And we can do better than that.
Amen.
All right, we're gonna go. Thanks everybody for listening to the Ground Game. Like, share, subscribe, share it on your Twitter machine, all that stuff. He's Tom. I'm Patrick. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Ground Game podcast.
Peace, y'all.